over the last few years, we've seen Sony start to make a bit of a push towards the PC market, specifically with some of their first-party games. And it seemed like at first it was to test the waters, to see if that really, one, the logistics were in place, the pipeline was there, and it made sense. Two, they were able to actually make money from the PC market. Well, as we are seeing them trend more and more towards just moving these games over, it appears, yeah, they're having success with the PC market. So much so that that window that we've discussed with Sony from a PlayStation 5 release for single-player games to a PC release does continue to shrink down. And this has come up once again, as we actually just had yesterday, another big first-party game get announced for PC. We're going to talk about that here today. So if you guys enjoy the video, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new. So let's take a look first at which game that is, and that's, we can see here, Spider-Man 2. This was announced at New York Comic-Con. They just put it out there, which, I mean, sure, makes sense. It's a comic book convention, Spider-Man, like the pieces fit, okay? And the news here is indeed that it's going to PC, but also it's going there sooner maybe than people were expecting, which we'll actually get to a comparison for some of these different games and the window that we have for PlayStation and then to PC. But you can see it says here, experience the latest chapter of Marvel's Spider-Man franchise on PC next year. It is arriving January 30th on Steam and Epic Games Store. If you remember, this game came out about a year ago now, and I liked Spider-Man 2 quite a bit, actually. There's this weird thing now going around where, and I guess it happens with a lot of games, it can kind of go either way, where after so much time, people all of a sudden start either liking the game more or just disliking the game. Spider-Man 2 has this strange thing going on where more and more people seem to be disliking it versus the original Spider-Man 2018. And I actually like Spider-Man 2 quite a bit. I thought it was a lot of fun. I liked the mechanic of switching between Miles and Peter. And there were some really cool things that happened later on in the game that I think leaned heavily into all kinds of different lore from comic books and different side characters in the Spider-Man universe, and certainly set up the next one very, very well. So I do recommend picking this game up, and it looked really good. Well, it looked good on the PS5. It's going to look awesome on the PS5 Pro. And then on PC, as we know, people who have these incredible builds and stuff, very expensive builds, but very powerful ones, it's going to look awesome. So, yeah, I mean, full, like, ultra widescreen support, I'm sure. A lot of really cool stuff going on there. They even mentioned they have enhanced features, which includes enhanced ray tracing options, take advantage of a variety of setups and configurations. So it does seem like, as we know, Nix's is getting a bit better as we've gone along, and as they've done more of these ports, to not only bring them over in a timely fashion, but also to build out and take advantage of some of the technology that we have in current cards, whether it's NVIDIA or AMD. Now, they also mentioned they have no plans for there being any kind of story DLC, and yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have minded seeing them do something else with it in terms of like a somewhat sizable paid expansion, but I also understand we are eventually going to get another game in this franchise, a third one, and it feels like at this point with Insomniac, they have a lot going on, so yeah, I wouldn't mind them maybe moving on to like the third one, and then most likely apparently doing Venom. Like there's going to be a Venom side story, I guess. So that coupled with Wolverine, and we saw some of the other games that leaked out during that Insomniac hack that, again, it seems like their pipeline is quite full here. But them with Nix's seem to be getting this game out pretty quickly. In fact, if we look over on PC Gamer, of course, they were, of course, looking back and seeing what the timeline was for Sony, specifically with these releases from PlayStation to PC. And, I mean, we can see when they were first really starting to do this, it was a lengthy time period. I mean, we're talking 2 years. I mean, some games we've had more recently were even longer than that. I mean, Ghost of Tsushima seemingly took forever, it feels like. Days Gone, kind of the same thing, right? But, like, when you look at PS5 only releases, or PS5 adjacent releases, I should say, with some like Horizon Forbidden West, there was a PS4 version, but you can see like 25 months. Returnal was 22 months. God of War Ragnarok, 22 months. Spider-Man 2, 15 months. I did leave The Last of Us Part 1 out of it, and the reason for that is because that is a remake, or it was a remake, but I think remakes and remasters, I actually believe, are going the opposite direction, because remember, that was actually announced for PC, like alongside of PS5, when I remember. It just took longer to get to PC. I actually think if Sony can do it here soon, any of those remasters or remakes that they want to do, I think they are going to try to get that on PC day one because it's a game that's already been available in their mind on the PlayStation console. This is then just them reintroducing it now to a new audience, right, on PC. So seeing something like Spider-Man 2 go over in, I mean, it's close to being a 1-year difference there for that console exclusivity. It has people once again talking about the idea of Sony maybe exploring day one single player releases. I do wonder if something like Helldivers 2, while that is a live service game, kind of gave Sony a bit of an aha moment, as in if you do it right, you can actually sell on PlayStation and on PC and end up with a big number. Like, remember they reported over 12 million copies selling, and it seemed like it was almost 50-50 at that point. It may have skewed one way or the other since then, but it was roughly that. So in their mind, it's like, well, if we just put this on PS5, we probably wouldn't hit that 12 million mark that fast. So there is an audience on PC that is willing to buy our games if they are good. Now, there is an obvious aspect here with the elephant in the room, that being their hardware sales, that Sony is still very hardware first with their PlayStation console. And I think that's one of the reasons they are being, I'll say, careful with this whole thing. I don't think they necessarily want to show up and go, hey, everything's day one PC and PlayStation 5, because they still want to sell PlayStation consoles. But I will admit, they have to be looking around and realizing, the competition has diminished with Microsoft. I mean, we see the sales numbers, we see the percentage drops. Microsoft talks about it year over year over year, and it's pretty clear at this point that this generation, the best-selling high-end console is going to be the PlayStation 5. It's almost like Sony has fallen once again into that sector of just being the default system for people who don't necessarily want to game on PC. And it seems weird and foreign to many people when I say that, but in my time working at retail for like a decade or so, when it comes to this stuff, there are many people who just don't want to play on a PC, whether it's because they're at work all day on one, or they don't really feel like doing all the setup or the weird things that can pop up with drivers or building the thing. The idea and the convenience, which convenience is a big deal, as we've seen with something like the Switch. Convenience is a big selling point for the console, and it still exists, and I think it still will exist in the future. So I know Sony is being very careful here and balancing this stuff, but I kind of think we are going to see them with those day one single player releases probably by the end of this generation. I think one is going to happen before the PlayStation 6 arrives, and I mean, Ryan brought up a good point a while ago, and I do agree with him that Sony, while they were trying to figure things out when it comes to the pipeline side of things, making sure they can deliver a day one release for single player, like all the stuff they try to do when it comes to quality and polish, and there's a lot that goes into that for them to make sure everything is set up at that kind of a cadence on PC and on PlayStation 5. There's a bit of a learning curve for them with that, for like these single player games. The live service stuff, it's almost a necessity because they need as many players as possible. But we are seeing Sony move more and more with something like this, 15 months between PS5 and PC release. We see them asking people to sign up with a PlayStation account to the point where you have to now to play these games. So there is a monthly active user aspect to it that they can benefit from, even if you're not buying a PS5. Okay, well, you are signing up for our service, and we can report that technically as a big benefit for our investors and stuff. And I think the potential is still there for them to tackle their own launcher. And if they are building up the library, they're building up the accounts, the trophies, the PlayStation Plus finds its way over with like a library of titles for PC on that launcher, I'm sure they could entice people to at least install it and give it a try. And I do feel like that's their end goal right now. And the more I see stuff like this with Spider-Man 2 making the jump, it seems pretty quick, right? It does make me think more and more that is probably a reality at some point. Do I think Ghost of Yote is going to be PlayStation 5 and PC day one? I don't. I think we're still a few years away. If I had to take a guess, the earliest I think it would happen with a single-player game might be like 2027. Might be 2028 if PS6 is like at the end of that year. But I think before this generation is out, a PlayStation 5 and PC single-player release will happen from Sony. And I'm not talking about a remaster, which, great example. We hear about the God of War Greek saga, how there might be a collection. There's a rumor going around. God of War 1 and 2, maybe 3 gets thrown in there at this rate. And it comes out on PC and PlayStation 5 day one. It's a remaster. It's games that have already been available in some way on PlayStation hardware. Why not? So like those things wouldn't surprise me. I mean like a brand new title that's PlayStation 5 only. There it is. It's single player and it's on PC. So yeah, I think that day is coming, and I think we're seeing these windows shrink down, and it's a very purposeful thing happening currently. Spider-Man 2 did cost a lot of money. Disney, somewhat involved, but I don't think they're like pushing and like, oh, you got to get this thing on PC. They're just asking Sony for money, and Sony's obliging, and they're like, well, we got to find more people. Okay, let's go to PC. And I think that's basically what we're seeing now. But let me know what you guys think about this one down below. Again, I see people go, well, why would I buy a PS5 if it's going to go to PC? Once again, convenience. And the fact that many people, again, still just don't want to play on PC. It's like, I just want to play on a console, sit down on the couch and play. And then on the other side, there are many people on PC who don't want to touch a console. So Sony might be looking at this as, hey, you know what? Those are people that weren't going to buy the console anyway. Let's get some money from them. But let me know what you guys thought about this down below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.